Now, before we go in there, let's have a kind of a recap of what all we've learned so far. So, anybody is open to tell me what we have learned so far?
The things that I learned from this,
Yes.
it is the story of one empire or a
Yes.
king. He's going for a special purpose,
Yes.
and he came back and he find outside world very interesting, and now he's back in his home.
Yes.
At one point, another point that he has it's like maybe it is every human is like that he has a kind of a spirit to know everything.
Yes.
And another thing he regret about his lifetime has passed, and now he is very old.
Good.
And he's unable to do anything.
Yes.
So these are all things that we learned. And as well, at the beginning you talked about that this area is an area of change.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And in this poem there are so many things
Yes.
that it's happening, and he come, he find everything quite changed. That's
Good. Anybody else would like to share something?
This is my son, my known
Telemachus,
to whom I leave the scepter and the isle. Well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labour by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Most blameless is he, centred in the sphere of common duties, decent, not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark broad seas.
My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me,
That ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honour and his toil. Death closes all. But something ere the end, some work of noble note, may yet be done. Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world.
push off and sitting well, in order smite the sounding furrows.
For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset, and the baths of all the western stars, until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down.
It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew.
Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
Now, up till here you find that the scene is taking place in the palace. Yes. So, there we are still in the palace. Now, Ulysses is introducing us to his son Telemachus, to whom he will ultimately give his kingdom and then go on his journey, resume his travels. Now, we earlier talked about how the Victorian era there were two kinds of people living in the society. A section of people who were ready to take risks, the section of people who are not willing to take any kind of risk. So, Telemachus is representing the conservative people of the Victorian era. So, are the conservative people bad in any way? No, they are more for stability is what I feel. Yes, we are happy with the way life is going. Why go in for a change? Unnecessarily disturbing ourselves. Yes. So, Ulysses might call such people frogs in the well, but they are happy to be there. And Telemachus is representing the conservative people. Not that he is doing something menial or wrong, but to each his own. What is good for Ulysses might not be good for Telemachus. As the saying goes, one man's food can be another man's poison. So, for Ulysses, the adventurous kind of lifestyle is well suited. For Telemachus, he would like to be a king and then rule his people, stay at one place. So, there are these two kinds of people living in society. So, Ulysses and Telemachus represent these two kinds of people. It is like the two sides of the same coin. This is my son, mine own,
Telemachus.
to whom I leave the scepter and the isle, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labour by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Ulysses wants to hand over his kingdom to his son Telemachus before he resumes his travels. The scepter over here is a ceremonial staff that symbolizes authority. It is a symbol of power, and Ulysses wants to hand over this scepter to his son Telemachus. So, he is actually giving over the kingdom. Isle is the island of Ithaca. So, he is handing over his kingship authorities to his son, and then he has to say a few words of praise for his son. What does he say? Well loved of me. Obviously, he loves his son a lot, discerning to fulfill this labour. So, Ulysses finds that Telemachus is an apt person to rule the kingdom. Labour is hard work, right, or any kind of work. So, he finds that Ulysses is a better person to rule the kingdom. By slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. So, all the qualities required for a king to change the uncivilized people into civilized people, try to make something good out of them.
Here, Ulysses and Telemachus can be said to represent the two generations of the Victorian era.
Exactly, good.
Where Ulysses is the generation of the Victorians that come up and fight wars and conquer kingdoms. Telemachus is of course the generation that has to come and rule.
Yes.
So that metaphor also comes through very clearly.
It does.
The generational one.
You're right. But Tennyson over here is talking more about the intellectual sphere. It's not stagnation. He's happy with his life basically, because that is what each of us is unique. What you can do probably I cannot do. Yes, but then do we complain about each other's abilities? We try to overcome the negative qualities in us or try to work on them, but Telemachus doesn't really see anything negative in staying at one place and then ruling his kingdom. They are the metaphors to represent each of us. We can take whichever metaphor we are comfortable with, right? Some of us might identify with Ulysses, some of us might identify with Telemachus. So that is what, Tennyson has left it to us. He is just trying to portray life as it is in the Victorian era. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine. So, he continues to tell us why Telemachus is an apt person to rule the kingdom, because he is fulfilling his duties in every sphere. Probably he is a good son, a good husband, a good father to his children, and definitely a good king to his people. And then he fulfills all his duties towards not only his subjects, but also to his family, and then also to the family deities, the household gods, which Ulysses wasn't really good at. He was more at war with the gods than in trying to please them, if you look in the broader perspective of the entire story of Ulysses. So, in every way Ulysses finds that Telemachus is the right person to be there on the throne. He works his work, I mine. So, he is clearly stating that they both have two different roles to play in life, and he also goes on to justify his claim as to why he wants to resume his travels.
It's interesting to note how Telemachus is the reason why Ulysses has to go on the Greek war. According to the myths, on the basis of which this poem was written,
Yes.
When the call for the Greek warriors came after Helen's elopement,
Yes.
Odysseus acted mad. He pretended to be insane so that he won't be called.
Yes.
Because he wanted to stay in Ithaca and in fact
Yes.
rule. The trick was they placed Telemachus on the ground in front of him on the land in which he was plowing.
Yes.
So he had to
Finally
go
confess
back
that he's
to
not
being
mad.
sane
Yes.
to prevent hurting his
Yes.
son.
Yes.
So if you look at the metaphors that way, the conqueror actually goes out on his conquest to preserve the conforming administrator coming up.
Probably because, as a father, he couldn't hurt his son. And after 40 years, he's habituated to one kind of lifestyle. And nobody wants to change that after a certain point of time. Yes. So anyway, Tennyson has taken up Ulysses after he's come back to Ithaca. He hasn't really talked about the past life of Ulysses. In the next stanza now, we find that there is a change in the scene. From the palace, we are moving towards the seaport. So we find that Ulysses is all set to travel again. And the next few lines, he is describing his fellow comrades and also the environment. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. So he is pointing out to the seaport. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. The ship is ready to go off on a voyage. There gloom the dark broad seas. So the seas again is not very favorable. The weather is not very favorable to Ulysses. He's always been out on the stormy seas. So the words gloom, dark, they signify the weather. Probably it is in good. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me. So you find that there are some like-minded comrades who share the same passion like Ulysses to go on an adventure, have a thirst for knowledge, passion for journey and traveling. That ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine. So they always had a smile on their face and they accepted both good and bad times. No complaints. So why does he say that? How do we know that? Thunder and the sunshine, they represent the good and the bad times. And opposed free hearts, free foreheads. So probably they are free of all their responsibilities. They have left everything behind and now they want to go on this journey. You and I are old. Old age has yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all. But something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. So Ulysses over here is telling us that he and his fellow comrades have now become old. But then he says old age has its own honor and its toil. Honor because along with age, assuming that we all become wise, we will be respected. Yes, we definitely have a lot more experience than the younger generation. Plus, it also has its hard work in terms of physical strength. Probably is talking about wherein when we become old, we need a lot more strength, patience to get through our normal work. And these people are going on an adventure, so they need all the more strength. Death closes all. Death is the end. It puts an end to everything. Before he dies, Ulysses wants to achieve something so that he might be remembered by the future generations. Not like the Trojan War, wherein occasionally the gods would come down and fight with either the Greeks or the Trojans. He doesn't want to take up a challenge as he did earlier with the sea god Poseidon's son Cyclops in the cave. But but he wants to achieve something good before he actually dies and see the great Achilles. So everyone has to die, but something at the end. So before they die, before Ulysses and his comrades die, what do they want to do? They want to do something, some small work, some work of noble note may yet be done. So there is still some time left, some energy in them left to do something good, some noble work, so that they are remembered. So this is where Ulysses is very subtly telling us that he wants to become immortal. He cannot do that in the sense that he cannot go on to live forever, but then his name will be remembered by all the future generations. Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. He has done that earlier, right? Now he wants to do something good, not really taking on a challenge with their gods, but something else, something noble for which he will be remembered. Okay. If you go back into history, the 10 long years of journey that Ulysses had to go through was because of the curse of the sea god Poseidon. Yes. So he doesn't want to take on another challenge. All he wants to do is some kind of good work for which people will remember him. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, the long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. He is describing the ambience. How is it? The day has come to an end. It is night now because the lights begin to twinkle. The slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. What is the deep moans over there? It is the sea. It is the noise of the waters, the wind and all that. Come, my friends, it's not too late to seek a newer world. So he is telling them, let's go on a journey. It is not really late to go in pursuit of new knowledge. Push off and sitting well, in order smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. He is actually talking about the sailing, the launching of the ship or the boat into the waters, and then as you strike with the oars, what's happening? You are actually creating a kind of furrow in the waters, a kind of pathway. So he is talking about the physical action of launching out into the sea. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. So that is what is the purpose of Ulysses' life. He wants to go on this journey and continue with it until he dies. Sail where? Cross the baths of all the western stars. So that was probably the end of the world for the Greeks. The pillars of Hercules, called the Straits of Gibraltar, now in geography. Yes. So the Greeks considered that to be the end of the world. So Ulysses wants to journey till there and then probably go on and on until he dies. It may be the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. In the course of their journey, probably they are going to die. The gulfs will wash them down. Yes, something might go wrong with the ship. They might hit some rocks and then they might sink or whatever. So in that process, in case they die, where does Ulysses think he will reach? The happy isles. Yes. So how many of us are going to heaven after we die?
Nobody but the divine heroes for the Greeks.
So assuming that Ulysses is a good person, so he is definitely going to reach the happy isles. Now that is what was paradise or the heaven for the Greeks.
Only people who are recognized as heroes go to the happy isles.
Okay, fine. And
Greeks don't have an idea of heaven and hell in the Christian way or even in the Hindu way.
Okay.
So you have the afterlife in Hades. You have, within Hades, you have two sections. You have Elysium, which is where the divine heroes go.
Okay.
You have another place, which the name I can't remember, which is where the people go who offend the gods.
Okay, fine.
And
so with
the
the happy isles,
afterlife,
you say there's something called as heaven and hell.
no, the happy isles is Elysium, which is reserved for the heroes.
Okay,
So that is the section of afterlife for the heroes.
So since Ulysses is a Greek hero, he is going to go to the Happy Isles, where he is going to meet the another great Greek warrior, Achilles. Okay. Though much is taken, much abides. So for so long, they have learnt a lot, experienced a lot, but still there is much more to be experienced, to learn. All our life is a learning process. And though we are not now that strength which in old days
moved earth and heaven,
that which we are, we are. So what does Ulysses say? And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved heaven and earth. So
During the Trojan War.
yes, they aren't really that good physically to take on any challenge and every challenge. But what they are accepting themselves as they are. That which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So he says, though they have become physically old, in their spirits they are still the same, who can do anything, accept any challenge, and then go on in their adventure. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate. He is again talking about their physical health, but strong in their willpower. And the last line sums up the entire philosophy of the Victorian era, that is to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield, not to surrender or give in to any kind of circumstances. Any other point to be added to the poem? You can.
Ma'am, there's a question.
Yes, sure.
Ulysses here is Tennyson's motive for the Victorian man in his quest for knowledge,
Yes.
definitely. But if you look at it from the religious point of view, it's very easy to cast Ulysses as the prototypical Greek tragic hero as well, because in Greek heroes we always see the dual responsibility of the divine and the man. There's nothing that a man can account for himself. In Ulysses, as you have pointed out, Poseidon makes some major changes in his life.
Yes. Yes. Here Tennyson is taking up Ulysses for only representing the thirst for knowledge. If you go into Greek mythology, I am sure there are many things which you and I will not agree with. Yes or no?
That was a school of thought, ma'am.
That is a school of thought, but Tennyson is not really looking at that school of thought, is how I would like to put it. He is only looking about the positive aspects of Ulysses being adventurous. See, suddenly somebody comes and tells us that there is no God. What would you do? Say yes to it, say no to it, or try to Google search?
Not vigorously.
Okay, but then
So Tennyson in some way is molding Ulysses in the Victorian framework.
yeah, he is. That is why he's taken it up.
No, also there's this very interesting thing that Tennyson is doing. For the Greeks, Ulysses is a symbol of coming back home.
Yes.
The idea is that the Iliad is a tragedy, the Odyssey is a comedy because it ends well. The hero comes home. And Tennyson has taken the man who spends the entire 10 years of his journey trying to come back home into a man who can't wait to leave.
Yeah.
So that is already a huge change in Ulysses.
Anything else to do with this poem or the Victorian era? Yeah.
The whole idea of meeting Achilles in the Happy Isles, because this is one of the first poems he writes after Hallam dies. And throughout his poems, there's always here, what is very interesting is that Ulysses and Achilles are not in the epics very close friends. But here he takes even the Achillean metaphor and uses it as a placeholder for Hallam, who he will meet
probably
when his
Tennyson
widowed
is-
races run.
Yes, probably Tennyson is trying to take it personally, where he would like to meet his friend after death. Yes, quite possible. Now, we'll conclude with the technique used in the poem. The poem, as we said, is a dramatic monologue. So, what is your understanding of a dramatic monologue?
There isn't a well-defined listener. It's more of a thinking aloud on part of the speaker.
Yes.
Or the narrator.
So, a dramatic monologue is a person speaking to an invisible audience. It might be specified, but they aren't really taking part in the action. The action or the drama is unfolding from the narrator's point of view, and it is through this narration that we try to understand the situation and probably even understand his character and his personality. So, in the sense that we are trying to go along with his emotions, probably place ourselves in his shoes, empathize with him, go through the same emotions. Now, that is what is a dramatic monologue. And of course, this poem is again written in blank verse. Blank verse is a form of writing poetry which was popularized right from the 16th century. Yes. So, what is blank verse? It is, by definition, it is writing poetry in unrhymed iambic pentameter. That is, there is no proper rhyming scheme that is being followed. Now, to relate Ulysses to our current generation, how many of us would like to go out and seek the truth rather than sit at home and, at the click of a button we learn everything? Yes. Google is doing all the work, but it's definitely an enjoyment to go out there and learn it in person. Yes, knowledge can be tangible, right? The enjoyment will be different. So, the current generation is kind of laid back, don't want to go out.
I guess we have managed a kind of synthesis of sorts where we
If there is a synthesis, definitely good.